Testing 5, 4, 3. Tell them they should cut the mics on.
Okay.
Five, 4, 3, 2, 1. Testing. Hope everybody's enjoying their lunch.
As we come to order, how's everybody feeling? Everybody enjoying lunch? We are going to have our lunch panel now. And the topic, when good people write bad policy, stop the FDA menthol ban. Our panelists are Elliot T. Boyce Sr., New York State Police retired. Give him a round of applause. Wayne P. Harris, Deputy Chief, Rochester Police Department, retired. Give him a round of applause. And Ray Ramos, NYPD, retired, and founder and executive director of Project Hype, Inc. Give Ray Ramos a round of applause. This session will expound on the lived experiences and expertise of the nation's leading black law enforcement professionals and community leaders on the unintended consequences of bans and prohibitions. Your moderator for our lunch panel, of course, none other than the Reverend Dr. Benjamin Franklin Chavis, Jr. Go right ahead, Dr. Chavis.
Thank you. Let's give Mark Thompson another hand. It's been a great convention thus far. We've covered a lot of issues, a lot of points of concern, opportunity, and challenge. This will be our last panel for the convention before we break down in our regions and have our regional membership meeting, annual membership meeting, as well as our national elections, and then we'll be ready for the black tie event tonight, where we're giving out some most deserved awards. We do have a message from President Biden that we've just received that we will play by video tonight at the gala. But I know this has been live streamed, and people in the White House want to know, am I going to note the fact that President Biden has addressed the National Newspaper Publishers Association, duly noted. Brothers and sisters, we've had this discussion before. This is not a new discussion for the NNPA. But what's significant about it, we're going to kind of bring everybody up to date on where things are on the proposed menthol ban, which has gone beyond just being a proposal. FDA has taken some steps that we feel are going to be detrimental to our communities, and communities in which we serve. The unintended consequences of a menthol ban is going to really hurt our community. Attorney General Keith Ellison spoke to us earlier about that not all cops are bad. And I just want to say that we got some good cops up here. Let's give them a hand. See, to me, when law enforcement does right, when law enforcement does, in fact, protect the community, when law enforcement articulates interests that helps our community move forward, we should not be silent about our support of our law enforcement brothers and sisters who are doing the right thing. And the National Organization of Black Law Enforcement Executives, the National Latino Officers Association of Officers, we work very closely together. So this is not like strangers meeting in the dark up here. We are colleagues, we're friends, we've been on tour all over the country in many different states and cities talking about the menthol ban. So we thought it was fitting to come to Nashville at our national convention to bring everybody up to date on this menthol ban. So I'm going to go right down the row. I'm going to moderate this, but it's really like a discussion, you know, between us so that the publishers will get a benefit. So, yes, we're going to show the video? Okay, let's show the video. Thank you. We have the video queued up.
From pro-slavery laws to Jim Crow, to prohibition, to racial profiling, to stop and frisk, History is clear. Racist laws and discriminatory bans have been devastating for Black and Hispanic America. The most recent manifestations of racial profiling are attempts to pass laws that will ban the sale of menthol cigarettes, preferred by over 85% of Blacks and Hispanics who choose to smoke. There is a long and troubled history of more unnecessary police stops and interactions with the police in communities of color, far too often with fatal outcomes.
We know in Black and brown communities, the police hunt. And in non-minority communities, they protect and serve. I'm telling you, I'm an expert on that. I worked in white communities where they could do whatever they want. And in black communities, there was no tolerance. They had to go to jail.
This issue I see right now, we're talking about making menthol cigarettes illegal. But now I know in New Jersey and in New York and some other states, they're making marijuana legal. Recreational marijuana is legal. To my knowledge, cigarettes don't make you high. Cigarettes don't impair your judgment when driving, but we're flipping one for the other. Let's legalize marijuana. Why? Because there's more money in it for the government, right? Let's make menthol cigarettes illegal and arrest more Black and brown people.
When you prohibit or greatly restrict popular adult products, commodities, in underserved, marginalized communities, you quickly develop a competitive illicit market, managed by local gangs, sometimes the cartels, usually violent, and employing large numbers of our youth to peddle these products. And let me say, most of my career was either in criminal investigation or narcotics investigation when I worked in Maryland with the Maryland State Police in Baltimore.
So this problem is not theoretical, it's happening every day. In areas such as Chicago that have seen violence occur as a result of this have begun to put together task force within their departments just to deal with the crime of illegal cigarette sales.
The proposed ban on menthol cigarettes will do nothing to stop this troubling daily reality in communities of color. The unintended consequences of a ban on menthol cigarettes need to be better understood by public policymakers who are contemplating passing legislation that will ultimately add to the often fatal interactions between Black and Hispanic Americans and police.
We talk about unintended consequences. We really have to be cognizant of this, and two, it may be intended consequences. What we know is that when certain things are criminalized, and these are medical problems, all right? I'm not talking about somebody robbing somebody committing a sexual assault on someone like that. I'm talking about when you're addicted to a substance, that's a medical problem.
I assure you, if this ban goes through, one, on the federal level, or particularly on a state level, when you do it on a state level, what's gonna happen is it can't be enforced because there's no entity for law enforcement officers to in fact enforce the law on a menthol ban. So that means we have to create ways in order to enforce this. So what it's gonna look like, it won't look like you was arrested for having Newport. You wasn't arrested for Marlboro. It'll be other offenses, the ones we know: disorderly conduct, obstructing administration, misdemeanor crimes, and then you always get the bonus, resisting arrest.
When I was approached by this, I was the president of Noble, and they approached me and they said, they're talking about a ban on menthol cigarettes. And I actually thought they were joking, because I'm saying, why would you ban menthol cigarettes? And again, don't smoke, don't want to smoke, we'll never promote anybody to smoke. But, it reminded me of the crack versus cocaine moment. Now, crack, you get all kind of time. Cocaine, you get a pass. And what's the difference? One community smokes crack, one community uses cocaine. More people went to jail during the war on drugs than in all of slavery. Bad policy affects us, and it hits us in a way that it don't hit any other community. And my frustration is we gotta stop it.
But let's look at it at another way too also. It's going to be used as an instrument to harass those who may not be doing anything but just smoking that one cigarette. So now all of a sudden that one person or a group of kids hanging out and somebody's smoking a cigarette, first thing the police is going to do is going to want to know where you got it from, right. Who's selling it, how much they got, and how can we connect to them. So now the kids are now being harassed, in forms we really don't want to go down to. But that was the initial idea of what the Stop and Frisk was.
Despite institutional racism and discrimination, the law enforcement partners have risen in the ranks from keeping the peace in neighborhoods across the country to the highest levels of executive positions in law enforcement on municipal, state, and federal levels.
As a police officer for 20 years, I've seen laws made with good intentions that have bad consequences, especially for communities of color. It's a bad law with bad consequences.
If we're the people who are being more arrested and more incarcerated, more detained by police, why would we create another situation where police would have that increased contact? And then you see the side, so we're going to hammer the point home. Because when you start having police officers determine whether a cigarette's mentholated or non-mentholated, whether it's legal or illegal, we already know what that turns into, right? That turns into a detention, an arrest, a summons somewhere down the line, and somebody doesn't pay a fine, and then it becomes a warrant, and then it becomes more people. So while we are taking many things off the table to decrease the opportunity to jail our communities, they're putting something back on in the back way to make sure that our communities become victims all over again.
For almost a decade, since 2013 up to today, the law enforcement partners have been on the road from Maine to Florida, from Washington, D.C. to Washington State, from New York City to rural Georgia, throughout Middle America, the West, and the Southwest, to more than 25 states and municipalities, to raise their voices of concern about the dangers of banning menthol cigarettes and its impacts on people of color, where more than 85% of blacks and Hispanics who choose to smoke prefer menthol cigarettes.
We have a lot of other alternative ways to go about dealing with menthol use, cigarette use in general, vaping. And we have to employ that educational component. We have to do it. You can't legislate your way out of stuff. So no, banning is not the way to go about doing it. Try some of the other measures that you seem to refuse to try.
You know, you smoke cigarettes for 100 years, and you say, okay, we're going to ban menthol. Black people are not going to just stop smoking.
We partnered with these folks because we got tired of seeing bad legislation being passed that impacted people in our communities. We partnered with these people because we got tired of seeing issues where the idiots on our job were taking advantage of that bad legislation to jack with people in our community. That's why this issue is so important, ladies and gentlemen. It's about making sure there is no bad legislation that has a direct and dynamic and dramatic impact on the people where we live, work, and play.
Because we not only here at Noble, we go to the Congress, we go to state legislators, we go to anywhere we can get this message out. I believe in preventive. If we can do something to prevent this menthol ban, then that's what we should be working on. That's why I'm about, my background is civil rights. But some of you, every time I stand before Noble, I say, I work with black law enforcement because it's better to be working with the police than chased by the police.
From one nationally recognized black law enforcement organization in 2013, working to stop menthol bans, to now 10 organizations, these black and Hispanic men and women in blue are dedicated to protecting all Americans, especially marginalized and over-policed communities of color. The law enforcement partners have garnered the respect of community leaders and legislators on both sides of the aisle. They have raised their voices of concern about the dangers of banning menthol cigarettes that will do more harm to black and Hispanic Americans than achieve the goal of public health protection. The law enforcement partners have responded to the calls to go on the road often in less than 48 hours to speak out on the issue to legislative bodies contemplating menthol bans. The law enforcement partners write letters, submit written testimony, call policymakers, and testify at city council hearings, hearings of boards of county legislators, state legislators, mayors, governors, and even meetings at the White House. The law enforcement partners are actively sought by local, national, and international print, syndicated radio, and television media outlets for commentary on community policing, police reform, and menthol bans. The law enforcement partners regularly reach out to members of the Congressional Black Caucus, Congressional Hispanic Caucus, National Black Caucus of State Legislators, National Association of Latino Elected Officials, Board of Latino Legislative Leaders, African American Mayors Association, Black and Hispanic State Caucuses, and Black and Hispanic Chambers of Commerce, where they have cultivated their long-standing relationships to secure allies in the fight to stop the menthol bans. Law enforcement partners will stay on the highways and byways across America to issue a clarion call to local, state, and federal legislators to stop the ban on menthol cigarettes.
All right, let's get right into it. Chief Harris, tell us from your perspective, where are we today with the proposed menthol ban by the FDA?
Well, first I want to thank Attorney General Ellison for speaking earlier and laying out how here in the United States there is a very concerted effort to turn back from the Warren Supreme Court to today. And we're seeing all of our rights rolled back. What the FDA is trying to do is an extension of that. Prohibition did not work in the 1920s when they tried it with alcohol. It resulted in organized crime spreading across the United States. It resulted in violence in our communities. It didn't work with the war on drugs. That resulted in an over-incarceration of people that look like us. As you saw in the video, what the FDA is trying to propose, which, by the way, they are going to probably announce as a rule in August, will result in illicit cigarette sales, gangs realizing that it's easier to sell illegal cigarettes than it is to sell narcotics. And by the way, the fine is remarkably and ridiculously low. And contrary to what they will tell you with regard to the health department being responsible for the enforcement of their rule, it will be law enforcement that deals with the consequences that will result from this prohibition. Last thing I'll say is this, because the video did not tell you this. A U-Haul truck full of illegal cigarettes, untaxed cigarettes. If I drive to the state of Pennsylvania, I live in New York, if I drive to Pennsylvania and I load up a U-Haul truck, that U-Haul truck is worth about $4.5 million. The fine of which is about $20,000. All we have to do is the math. This is a problem that not only is going to occur across the country, it is already occurring in areas of the country that have put in place these sort of prohibitions.
Thank you, that's a good segue. Elliot, you have a long, distinguished career in the state police. Based on what Chief Harris said, tell us how you see it. But also, our audience here are publishers from the NNPA, from all over the United States. What is your forecast? If we don't get a hold of this menthol ban, what is your forecast from your experience perspective of why we need to alert our communities through our publications and through our media organizations about the consequences of the proposed menthol ban?
Thank you. I will tell you, the menthol ban, the conversation is saying that menthol is more harmful than any other cigarette. And what people have to understand, particularly in this room, who's going to be passing information on, what they're going to tell you is a ban on menthol cigarettes is going to be handled by the health department. If you take anything away from this, remember this comment right here. Anything you ban becomes illegal. That's a cop thing. It's not a health department. So they'll come to you and say they could put this ban through the health department, and the health department's gonna deal with it. That is a lie. First of all, police departments don't have the resources to deal with it. Health departments don't either. If you want to test this, at 501, try to get somebody at the health department to come and deal with your problem. It's not going to happen. So what I foresee happening is, because in order to understand this, even as publishers, you have to understand policing. And the way policing goes in society today, and why it's really important to this menthol ban is, in order to get, you never see the school resource officer get promoted to detective. Never. They're the community person. They're the people that engage the community. That's the street officer. The people you see get promoted are officers that make a lot of arrests, write a lot of tickets, or the most aggressive officers. So when you think about the bottom line for publishing and making money, the bottom line for the police officer in many cases, and I'm not saying all police officers are bad, but what I'm saying is, to get to that next level, you either have to take the test or you have to be stringent. And how that's going to be impacted by this menthol ban is, menthol cigarettes now in urban communities and Latino communities will be one more tool for police officers to create a number for them to get promoted. So understand, you ban it, you make it illegal. The police culture, the way it works, and no one can deny it. There's two big lies in policing: diversity, equity, inclusion. Lie. It is a lie because it's a paramilitary organization. The only way you get promoted is unless you pass the test, right? So it doesn't happen. And when you talk about enforcement, getting promoted to the next level, if you understand policing, the more arrests you make, the more likely you're gonna make more money. And most police officers get into the game of policing to help people, and somewhere along the way they lose their way, and it becomes money. And money's arrest. You add the menthol ban there, it'd be one more thing for us to arrest you for, or interact with people for.
Thank you. Brother Ramos, you executive head of Project Hype. Explain to our public, what is Project Hype, and how does this intersect with the whole idea of our efforts to try to prevent a ban on menthol?
Well, Project Hype is a mentoring program that I started when I was a law enforcement officer back in 1993. It's an acronym for Helping Young People Evolve. It's a manhood leadership development program. And I deal on a daily basis with about 70, 80 young men of color. A ban such as this is targeting. I spend a lot of time with educating our young men on not only the concepts of manhood and being a part of your community, but also showing them and protecting them and teaching them how to deal with interactions with police. Now you add this on, another stressor to the community. And we at the Latino Officers Association, me being an Afro-Latino man, I see this as more of a medical model. We need to prepare our communities. We don't promote smoking, but we have to be educated. We have to prepare our communities. Some states that have already had this ban implemented, on how do we get the information out and educate our communities and prepare our communities for what's going on. This is a weaponizing tool. Like my colleagues stated, that law enforcement officers will use this as a tool to be intrusive. You had stop, question, and frisk. Now you have this as another tool that officers can use to put our young people of color and our people in general in a situation where they now have to be possibly stopped, detained, and incarcerated for something beyond just the menthol cigarette. So this is something that we seriously need to get out. You need to use your resources to make sure that we hold our legislators accountable. However they brokered this deal behind closed doors, they legalized marijuana, and now they're pushing this menthol ban. We need to hold them accountable. Hold them accountable in the election process, and hold them accountable to what they swore to do. Because as a law enforcement officer, one of our first oaths when we swear in is we in partnership with the community. This by no means says to the community that law enforcement is in partnership with them.
Very good. You know, we've discussed this issue and challenge in many different places. Chief Harris, are we winning?
Well, so that's an interesting question, because the FDA has put out a number of different versions of their particular rule. Initially, it was just an all-out straight ban on it, and then we began, and I'm not trying to pat us on the back, but I note this because this is factual. They put out their first bit of information. We started going around the country having these conversations, and the next version that the FDA put out was written to defend against everything that we were saying. So, Doc, you're asking, are we winning? Yeah, I'm gonna take that as a win if I can get the Federal Drug Administration to change their narrative, to try to combat the fact that what they are trying to propose is going to cause greater harm to the community than it is going to help. And the other thing is this, they put out all of this science. They use graphics that are from the 1970s, but their current graphics will show black faces up there, and they will frame this in terms of protecting black lives. The reality is this, the science does not support what they're saying. In fact, in Massachusetts, that tried a menthol ban, the result was twofold. One, they lost all kinds of money because those people that wanted their menthol cigarettes went into Connecticut, went into New Hampshire, went into Vermont, and went into New York to buy their cigarettes. And the other thing that happened was all of those people that couldn't get menthol switched to regular cigarettes, and the rates of smoking went up. So I'm gonna take what we're doing as a win.
Yes. And the information, I think the failure of the menthol ban in Massachusetts, more people need to know about that, beyond Massachusetts. Elliot, in terms of, Chief had raised this issue about contraband. And a lot of our communities, particularly our young brothers and sisters, get involved in street hustling, which sometimes escalates to something much more serious. And we still have this issue of mass incarceration. We still have this issue of racial profiling. Can we get official statements from police agencies that oppose the menthol ban so that when we write about it in our publications, it's just not like we feel that the menthol ban is not right, but some official bodies of law enforcement, to your knowledge, that will come out against the menthol ban?
There's been some national organizations that have come out, like Noble, who've talked about it. But when you talk about local police agencies themselves, I'm gonna put that on you. When you leave here, the challenge should be, or the ask should be, to ask your local law enforcement officers what you think about it. Because if you go to that union and you could put the pressure on them and have a conversation with them, they may understand better, because realistically, not only this is a community issue, but it is also a safety issue for police officers. Because as you increase trafficking, that means police officers stand a greater chance of encountering somebody smuggling cigarettes into the community, which now is a health issue. I mean, it's a safety issue. But not only is it a safety issue, when you really think about this, the undertone of this really should be education, treatment, and counseling. The same way in which they dealt with the opioid, let me say that again, the opioid, which they gave people education, treatment, and counseling, where when we did RICO, and everyone should know Cousin Rico, because it put a lot of young black men and women in jail for a long time. And RICO is basically federal statutes, federal laws for racketeering. So any organized crime, which is gonna be our street connoisseurs, our young folk, when they realize that there's no laws on the books in certain states, what they'll do is they'll create a federal task force. That federal task force will be comprised of multiple agencies who will be federally funded, and then their job will be go out there to tackle smuggling of cigarettes. And it's gonna have RICO on top of it. So that's very dangerous in itself. So education, treatment, and counseling, understand that these police departments do have an obligation to address this, but they won't unless someone brings it to them. And your publications are the very caveat or avenue to bring it to them. Ask them, put them on stage and ask them, or put them on Front Street and ask them about what are they doing about this thing. Because as Wayne said, are we winning? Usually when we present to people, most people are sitting in the audience like, I can't believe they're doing this. From the community, from the looks of some of your faces, and even from police departments that we spoke to. We sat in front of many different police departments with many different faces, shades of color, and when you look at the police officers, every last one of them said, this is crazy, why would we do this? But the message is, it's about the black kid It probably is about the black kid, but it should be about all kids. And I'll end with this. If you draw a line straight down the middle of this room, because most people don't understand it, this side of the room will be enforced because black folk won't be, black, Latino, Native Americans won't be able to have access to the menthol cigarettes, cigarette of their choice. But this side of the room, as long as they don't have menthol in it, will be able to smoke as much as they want. So on that premise alone, it's a biased bill to start. So please, when they come to you and you tell them it's gonna go through the health department, anything that's banned is illegal. When they tell you the health department has the resources, and this is what they're going to say to you. You know, there's a master settlement agreement that basically says that you cannot advertise, hence the reason why you see no LeBron James, you see no Michael Jordan, you see no Wayne Gretzky, you see no athletes, no rappers on any cigarette commercials anywhere. It is illegal. So pay attention to it and don't get caught up with it.
Thank you. Brother Ramos, in New York, what is the extent to which that Latino and black officers are working together on this issue? You know, in general, most people say there's a community support for community policing, where the police are seen really protecting the community rather than patrolling the community or on the hunt to harm the community. What is their interaction between Latino and black officers in New York around trying to prevent this ban from happening?
Like Elliot said, that a lot of law enforcement officers that I've spoken to have said, of course, this bill, it just adds more stress to the police department. You're adding this on, now you have a commanding officer that not only has the answer for the major index crimes and the things that go on, now this is an extra added stressor onto the police department, where it's a department now that's trying to remedy and repair a lot of the broken trust of the community. Now you add this on, and it makes it that much more difficult for an officer to do his job. Those officers that are out there doing the right thing and want, like myself, when I was there trying to make the community better and understand our people, you're now putting them in a position where they have to choose. And that is a remedy for failure. But the fact that we're having these conversations and we're gaining more and more information and more people are beginning to get out there and make this known, this is a win for us that we have to continue to build upon.
Thank you. We're going to wind down. If each of you had an opportunity to write an op-ed for one of our newspapers, what would the title of the op-ed be?
I had to go first, huh? Shoot. Very likely that prohibition does not work. It has never worked. Gotcha. And it has only ever harmed us.
Elliot?
The trick called the menthol ban.
All right, that's good. Go ahead.
Medical model is not a problem until it's a problem.
Let's give our officers a hand. Thank you for informing us. All right, we're good shape. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Great conversation. Thanks again to Elliot Boyce, Wayne Harris, and Ray Ramos. Give them one more round of applause as they leave the stage.
Doc, are we doing a picture?
Right on time. We're supposed to start the membership meeting at 1:35. It's 1:36. So we'll just lose time
I don't know.
moving next door
Yes,
again.
we're
We
done.
got to move again. We'll go to membership, and then we'll break up into regions. We'll let everybody know which region they're in once we get next door. Amen? Let's give Dr. Chavis another round of applause as well. All right, thank you all. We'll see you next door. If you can move expeditiously again,
take it from down there.
please. Let's walk and talk at the same time, can we? Walk and talk.